All right, hi everyone. This is Jill from the North Woods. We've been talking about Jesus discussing these parables, and these parables are complex stories, but they're told in such a way that regular people can understand them. It involves daily things that they notice in their lives: birds, leavening, land, soil, seeds, sheep, weeds, those kinds of things. We get it. We all understand it because they are topics we understand the most. And they're easy to remember, and then go back home and tell other people because you remember a story. In chapter 14, we're going to see a different part of this story. It talks about Herod the Tetrarch, which means the fourth. He was a sub-leader. He wasn't a king. He was another one of Herod's sons, and it was just called the fourth. Herod the fourth. And this is going to be another one of Herod's relationships. He heard about Jesus and what Jesus was doing, and seemed maybe he was a little bit interested in it. He had John the Baptist in prison, and he got confused. The one who put John the Baptist in prison and killed him, and he gets a little bit confused. Is this John the Baptist raised from the dead? They went on. So he's not sure exactly who Jesus is or why he is talking now after John the Baptist is dead. So this is Herod's son. He stole his brother Philip's wife and daughter, Salome, and they came to live with him. And John was making a big stink about it. He was telling Herod, the Tetrarch, the truth. This will not stand. You cannot steal your brother's wife. This is not a marriage. You can't do this. This is not according to the laws of God. And the thing you have to understand about Herod's children is Herod was a great builder. Like I said, he would be known in history. Even if the Bible didn't exist, he was a known figure. He was a friend of Cleopatra, Herod the original, but his sons were none too good. For the most part, they were bad leaders. They were not well respected, and they weren't going to be given kingship by Rome because they were not respected. The wife that he stole, her name is Herodias, and this John the Baptist encounter did not make her happy. And so in the midst of John yelling at Herod about that, he's technically yelling at her and yelling at the daughter too. So Herodias goes to the daughter and says, dance for Herod. If you give him a dance, this will impress him and he'll give you whatever you want, and make sure that you ask for John the Baptist's head on a platter. Most people feel that dances were done as almost like a courting ritual. This was a sexy dance. This was a dance that was meant to enthrall him so that this son would give the daughter anything she asked for. Yeah, this is kind of a gross story. And so he danced, and then she asked for the head of John the Baptist. This is a popular story to tell in Sunday schools because you would make a papier-mâché head of John the Baptist. And the king sees the dance and is like, sure, I can do that. The king then was sorry because he swore an oath, and he realized he had to do this. So he went and had John the Baptist, who was in prison, beheaded. Probably not him, but certainly his people, and brought his head on a platter. This is pretty grisly and pretty terrible thing that Herod is doing. And it's interesting to me, I guess, in a sense, that Herod, when he found out that the Messiah was going to come, got wise people to try to do his bidding, got scholars and scribes to study to figure out where this Messiah was going to be born. But Herod the Tetrarch didn't seem that concerned. He didn't really know Jesus from John, and feels like a little lazy. He's a little blurry and fuzzy about the whole situation, and he didn't work very hard to sort of straighten this out. Not a good king, not that curious, and doesn't get the right people in place to figure out what's going on. And to steal your brother's wife and child, also pretty bad. And so when Jesus heard this news, it said that he was compassionate. He had compassion. And this word compassion doesn't do it justice in the English language. You have compassion and your heart goes out to him. But this is compassion like you are drenched in sorrow, that your heart is going to just burst because of so much sorrow in it. You're physically changed by this particular kind of sorrow. And he decides that he wants to go into a desolate place to be alone, probably to pray, to consider what has happened. And he wants to go out into this desolate place, but the crowd continues to follow him, and he has this compassion. So he starts healing people and healing the sick. And his disciples say, hey, send these people away. It's getting late. They're pretty hungry. We don't have food to feed them. Get rid of them. All we have are 5 loaves of bread and 2 fishes. It was some boy's lunch. And this was probably going to be dried or salted fish. And the bread was going to be hard bread because it lasts a little bit longer when you're carrying it around. So Jesus says to bring those items to him, and then he breaks the bread and gives thanks to God. And then he makes a meal that feeds 5,000 men. That also means that there are women and children there. There are more than just there are just more than just 5,000 people there. Don't get offended. That's their counting system, that they counted men. But like I said, there were women, wives, children, daughters, sons. And so it was probably a lot more people than that. But he had compassion on them. People have to eat. And they wanted to be near Jesus. They wanted to hear what was going to happen next. So the disciples get back in the boat, and Jesus goes to the mountain to pray alone. Because again, he is sad. Even though I think he knows what was going to happen, he knew what happened, he still prays. You'll find Jesus resting, praying, being alone, just like any other human being. He is teaching us how to deal with things. And so the boat is on the Sea of Galilee, and Sea of Galilee, again, is very susceptible to storms. And we can't take away the supernatural aspect of this. So Jesus starts walking out towards the boat. We find out in other gospel, he's trying to walk past the boat. But everyone's freaked out because this storm is brewing. They now see Jesus walking on water, and they're scared. They think they've seen a ghost. And so then when they see it's Jesus and not just some weird person walking out on there, Jesus calls to Peter and tells him he can come out and walk too on water. Peter's a bold guy, and sometimes he's impetuous. In this case, God gives him this ability to do this. Then Peter says, if you're really Jesus, make it so that I can walk on water too. Peter gets out of the boat after being granted this wish and starts to walk. And he's amazed, but he sees the waves around him. And he becomes afraid, and then he starts to sink into the water and begs Jesus to save him. And Jesus raises his hand into the water and grabs him out and pulls him out, and they're both in the boat. Boy, if you saw this in The Chosen, I think that I'm not a very weepy person. I'm a pretty not emotional person at all. And when I saw this scene where Peter starts to drown, and suddenly you see this hand plunge in and grab Peter and pull him back up, it made me, I will talk about it in the meditation phase of it. I got weepy. It was such a touching moment. It's a touching moment in the Bible too. When we're in our biggest storms, when we think we're bold and we walk on water like Jesus asked us to come out and do, and then we start to look around us and see the dangers, we start to sink too. And Jesus is always there. John Ortberg wrote a really good book called If You Want to Walk on Water, You Have to Get Out of the Boat. That's what's happening here. You have to, if you want to have these experiences of God, you have to step out a little bit. That means when Peter was in contact with Jesus and this strong faith and this strong connection, he was able to come out and walk. But then when he started to lose that connection because the waves, the storm, the reality he's walking on water, he separates himself from Jesus. And then that's when he starts to sink. Wow. So people talk about it as some side information. This is what was called the fourth watch. So how Jews told time and how Romans told time is entirely different. Between 6 p.m. and 6 a.m., that's the fourth watch. This is going to be somewhere near dawn where this was happening. And so they were terrified then because of the storm. And he says, take heart. It is I. Do not be afraid. This is going to be a message that we're going to see time and time in the Gospels, and we're going to see it in the Old Testament. When Moses asked God what his name was, he said, I am what I am. And that's Yahweh, and we'll see that in the Old Testament. Jews were forbidden from saying that, and so they would replace that phrase with Adonai, my Lord. When we see Jesus saying, I am, he is telling people he is that same God of the Old Testament, the same God that was with Moses in Egypt. It is this idea, he is complete. He is the complete Lord. There's no qualifier to him. He is. And that's what he's hearing here. So every time when you hear Jesus say, and they say, hey, who is this? We're terrified. We're scared. And Jesus says, I am. That's what he's referring back to. And we're going to see him do that many times. The Greek is a little bit different from the Hebrew in this particular case, but it is I am all the same. And then he says to Peter, O ye of little faith. I think that's the King James version of it. But in ESV, it says, O you of little faith, why did you doubt? Why did you think that the waves and the wind and all the things are going to come between us? That suddenly a power or ability I gave you is going to go away because of what you see in your periphery. And when they heard this and he got in the boat with Peter, they were amazed, truly. And they said, he is truly the Son of God. There's no more doubt in their minds. They understand this isn't just a wise man. This isn't just a rabbi they're following. This instead is God himself. They finally get it. So they go back to Gennesaret, which is a town, and it's about 5 miles southwest of Capernaum. And that's probably the closest place from where the boat had this incident. And it said that they arrived there immediately. It wasn't that they traveled there. Crowd is still there. They were probably following Jesus along the shore as they were walking back. More people to heal and more people who were trying to reach Jesus. Then we learn about a woman who had a bleeding problem and touched his cloak. The people there in Gennesaret were like so desperate for healing. Can we just touch your cloak? Can we just touch the fringe? The stories must be getting out. And again, cloaks don't heal people. Jesus heals people. So that ends chapter 14. And what I'm going to meditate on is this Jesus reaching into the sea and pulling up Peter. Despite his doubts, despite our doubts, despite our lack of faith, despite the fact that when we're not believing God, he reaches his hand out to us all the time and wants to save us. He cares for us. And like I said, when I watched this in The Chosen, I don't know, I've read this dozens of times. That's so cool. That's such a cool story. And then when I saw it on The Chosen, that image of that hand plunging into the water and reaching out and grabbing Peter's hand, I got weepy about it. That's where we are when we're at our deepest moment. A lot of times being in the sea in the Bible, like Jonah, is like a depth, is almost like a hell, that we're farthest away from God we possibly can. And Jesus is always there to plunge his hand down towards us and to save us. And what I'm going to pray about is that I always have the boldness Peter has to trust in God. I am not a trusting person. I'll be honest with you. I'm just not. When I think about my retirement was not enough to help me, I went out and got a new job, which there's nothing wrong with that. But did I pray about it? Did I think that God would help in any sort of way? Instead, I did what I needed to do, which was go get another job that had better retirement in it. I need to think and rely on God more and pray to God when I have those moments that I'm not willing to walk out of the boat. I'm just not. And what I'm going to share with others is the fact that God is always there for us. He was there to heal people when he was sad about John the Baptist's death. And he was there for people when they were in a boat and frightened. No matter how many times Jesus says, fear not, they get afraid. We get afraid. And he's always there for us all the time. Everyone, thanks so much. I appreciate you watching this video. Please remember to subscribe, tell a friend, and go download the Ramps Bible Study. Read, analyze, meditate, prayer, and share with other people. We are about halfway through Matthew, and we're going to get into all the stories all along. Eventually in the Gospels, we'll see some repetition in there, but different takes, different aspects of it that the story tells. Again, Matthew is all about prophecy, fulfillment, and that Jesus is the Messiah. You can always email me at jill@startwithsmallsteps.com. Thanks so much for watching.